Hello everybody, welcome along to this video, which is Mr. Johnson Teaches A Christmas Carol, focusing on the Malthusian Principle. Something you may have heard of, something you may never have heard of. Either way, this video will be a useful recap for you and hopefully can push you along to some of the highest marks that you can achieve in A Christmas Carol with the ideas contained in it. So this is linked to your GCSE English Literature, and within that it will be Paper 1, Section B, making it the first literature paper that you sit, and normally the first English paper you sit, because the literature normally comes before the language. So either way, please be ready to pause this video and be ready to make notes as well. Really important that you don't just watch these videos, but you're actually actively making notes as well. It means the information is more likely to stick into your brain. So then, without further ado, let's move on, shall we? And just set this amongst the context, AO3 as it says atop there, Assessment Objective 3. It's one of the areas that you are marked on when somebody is reading your response to A Christmas Carol, and it does link to the context, so the time that the text is written and what was happening in the world at that time. So be ready to talk about context, and it's really important you understand the context. As I put there, the second bullet point, the context for A Christmas Carol includes the enormous poverty that was going on in society at this time, and the ideas that those who are most able in society, the rich, maybe had more to do to support those who were less able, the poor. And that was something that Dickens really focused on. Understanding Dickens's message and linking your writing to those sorts of messages will gain you more marks when it comes to writing about A Christmas Carol. So always be thinking about what Dickens is trying to say through the book. So let's think about this then. Before we move on to the Malthusian Principle, it's really important to understand the challenges of poverty in the Victorian era, as I've put at the top there. So this is a time of massive population increases, and particularly populations shifting from the countryside into the cities. Cities like London experienced enormous growth, as did Manchester, Birmingham at this time. And what it led to was massive overcrowding. There wasn't simply enough housing for all these people, and it led to some slums being created. Really cheap housing was thrown up very quickly. It was such poor quality that they really are termed as slums. You would have multiple families, multiple generations living in one room, and everything would happen within that room. But also this was a time of real poor sanitation as well. We're talking outside toilets or literally inside toilets in something like a bucket, and then that is just chucked out into the street. But then people's drinking water would become contaminated, a real lack of hygiene. There were massive health problems, and while I won't list them all here because I want this to be a quick video, things like cholera was a real problem at that time, and cholera is a waterborne disease, like parasites that get into the water, and that's what happened to a lot of people in the Victorian time if they didn't have access to clean drinking water. But also the further challenges as well are diseases and accidents. Scenes like this photo here really capture the idea of child labour. Children, if you were old enough to do something, you would be in the world of work trying to earn money, because you were then an extra asset. You were somebody earning your family that little bit more money if you could find a job. But in some areas, as my second bullet point says, some areas of London in the 1840s, which is the same decade that A Christmas Carol was published, infant mortality was around 33%. That means that infant mortality is another phrase for the death of children dying. So around 33% of children under the age of 5 could be expected to die before they reach their 5th birthday, and that is a staggering statistic. While I don't have our current statistics, it's certainly less than 1% in our current world, and further than that in Britain. So hopefully it just sets up a scene for you of just how challenging these times were. And against this backdrop, you get this man, Thomas Malthus, and what is called the Malthusian Principle. So let me unpack that for you a little bit then. Thomas Malthus, the man pictured there, he was a scholar, so sort of interested in writing and interested in academic studies, and he explored many things, including the idea of population, and also looked at the economy and how our systems are working in the country. He published then this essay on the principle of population, that was called, and he published that in 1798. It was a wide-ranging thing which covered many areas, but one of the key areas that we are interested in linked to A Christmas Carol was what it says in my third bullet point there. He proposed that food production could not keep pace with population growth. That is to say that population was rising so much that he believed, that there wouldn't be enough food produced to feed the population. He went on to say, therefore, that hunger, disease and war, they were natural checks on population growth, and by that I mean they were natural things which kept population down and stopped it rising too much and too quickly. It was almost a natural way of keeping things under control. Now, at the very bottom there, Dickens was a critic of principles like these. Thomas Malthus wasn't the only one suggesting ideas like this. He's the one that we're going to be interested in, but Dickens really was critical of people like Thomas Malthus. And he uses Scrooge, I put there the really nice phrase here, he uses Scrooge as a vehicle to criticise those views. So Scrooge is almost used as a tool, if you like, to try and attack these ideas, because Dickens strongly did not believe that hunger and disease were natural ideas that controlled a population. He found that sort of idea horrible, and maybe you do too. I certainly like to think so. So moving on then, Dickens's response, well, that's what I've just said. He uses Scrooge. Scrooge is used to represent, and I think the phrase that you really want to try and use here is embody. Scrooge is used to embody the Malthusian principle, as in he almost is a character who brings to life, and he says things which sound very Malthusian. Dickens then shows the cruelty of the principle through Scrooge. He shows how cruel that idea is. The Cratchit family are a happy family. They work hard, they do everything they need to, and they are happy despite being poor, but they're suffering in poverty because they're being paid poorly by Scrooge. It's not because of their lack of food or anything like that. They cannot afford what they need to survive, and people like Tiny Tim, characters like Tiny Tim, become ill because of it. And the quote there at the bottom is the one that Scrooge says, which really directly links this idea. So he says, "I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry," what he views as idle people, like lazy people. "I help to support the establishments I have mentioned, which were prisons. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. The charity collector says, many can't go there and rather die." And Scrooge then responds with, if they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population, which is a real direct link. Surplus population, like surplus meaning too much, and that links to the idea of Thomas Malthus, suggesting that population was growing too quickly and that we couldn't afford, or we weren't able to feed that population. And it's just shown, because Scrooge is so cruel, it shows in that way how cruel the idea of Thomas Malthus is as well, and that's how Dickens goes on to attack it. And that's where that video almost ends. I've got one more slide to show you, but hopefully that captures it for you. It's really up to you to try and link the idea of Thomas Malthus. You'll never be asked a question about it, so it's up to you to almost use the idea and feed it into your essay and show how Dickens was trying to attack these cruel ideas and actually show how people like Scrooge, because there would have been rich people in the Victorian society at the time who were like Scrooge, how actually it's not about the people who are in poverty, they just need to die to decrease the surplus population. Actually, those with money need to support them better, and then they won't need to die. So here's some quick recap questions for you. Pause this slide and have a go at those. All of the answers that you see on the screen there, or the questions, sorry, that are on the screen there, the answers are in the video that I've just gone through with you. And I hope you found that useful. There are, of course, other videos on my channel on all sorts of topics, including literature, other Christmas Carol videos and language videos, all sorts to try and support you through your GCSEs. So I'm going to say thank you very much for listening all the way to the end here, and good luck when it comes to your GCSEs, and goodbye.